Our technologies permit us to manipulate time and space.
Yes.
How exactly does that work?
One satellite could deliver electricity to that spot and 1,000 other spots. What China is building is a solar array that can absorb that sun's power. And then you beam that radio wave down to Earth back into electricity. In a millisecond, they could turn it into a directed energy weapon to destroy.
Say that again?
Yeah. If the communication is observed, it will rewrite history and it will never have happened. It is the evidence of God.
You said that we have the technology to be able to transport anybody from one point on Earth to another point in less than an hour.
Correct.
And you'd also spoke about beaming energy down to our devices to charge.
So as I watch, for example, another country developing solar power from space, which is the technology of capturing the sun's intense energy in space, where there's no night and day, there's no weather to get in the way of the sun, and then transforming that into a radio wave and beaming it to Earth to be able to turn it back into electricity on the Earth, which is one of the things I talked about in that Hillsdale speech. That can be used for peaceful purposes. I mean, that can be used to immediately send electricity to the tribe I grew up in Africa that has no power plant, no power lines, nothing, because the topography is so aggressive. You know, it's the transportation modalities are so insufficient that it's nobody would have the affordable business case to build them the electricity they need. But one satellite could deliver electricity to that spot and 1,000 other spots. And so, but if, let's say if one of our competitors develops that infrastructure in space, and they use that to uplift the human condition by providing electricity to people who don't have it, in a millisecond, they could turn it into a directed energy weapon to destroy the people at that location. So, so let me give an analogy of air power. If you read the literature after 1903, when the Wright brothers invented the airplane, it was like our Federalist Papers, where there were some good arguments about the fact that it is immoral to develop an airplane because you could drop a bomb on somebody's head. And others saying it is moral to develop an airplane because you can transport a sick person to the hospital and save their life. And back and forth. Just like the Federalist Papers argued, should America have a Navy or not have a Navy? And it wasn't a no-brainer. It was a real argument that a Navy's too expensive. Why would we spend money on a Navy?
Wow.
Well, because your survival depends on it. If somebody who is not your friend decides to use it as a weapon against you. What China is building is an infrastructure in space that will be able to see and kill anything that flies above the trees. And we need to build the same capability so that space is peaceful and that there's a deterrence where China knows that if they behave irresponsibly in space, whether it's creating space junk or a directed energy weapon that paralyzes a portion of our economy at the time of their choosing, that they can't get away with that because we're up there with them with better or equal technology. And that there is a balance of power. Right now, we're on a track where we build better satellites, but they're building a superior strategy. And all the money in the world cannot solve a disconnect in strategy. Mm-hmm. This is about the fact that everything that is national security is upstream of the economy. And if you can build an infrastructure of reusable satellites that you build in space, where you can build them as big as you want, you can upgrade, modernize, and recapitalize them at pennies on the dollar so that every new innovation, whether it's quantum coming online or a new supercomputer, you just unplug the old computer and plug the new one in. Now you can invest in a very low-cost infrastructure that taps into trillions of dollars worth of revenue.
Wow. With these satellites that you're talking about that would be solar powered and beam energy, and I mean, how exactly does that work?
It has been known that we could do this. The physics have been known, and now we're at a place where it's been demonstrated. The X-37, the Air Force space plane that used to be secret, that's not secret anymore. It's been doing experiments showing what I'm going to describe right now. And what you do is that the intensity of that sun's power, you build a solar array that can absorb that sun's power, and then you translate it into a radio wave, and then you beam that radio wave down to Earth, and it's received by called a rectenna, and then you turn it back into electricity, and you're done. I mean, it's that simple. But because it's a radio wave, it is not diminished by the weather. Okay, so or the atmosphere or the gravitational field or any of the things that can sometimes prevent energy from getting to the Earth. So solar, and this is the other piece of it. The demonstrations that we see are at efficiency levels that we are not used to right now. Any electricity that you're getting right now, whether it's created by wind energy, solar energy, nuclear energy, fossil fuel energy, wave energy, you name the technique for delivering the electricity that's powering these lights right now. And you're lucky to get in the high 20s, low 30s of efficiency. Meaning by the time you create the energy at a power plant and you bring it across the power lines and you bring it into your house, the heat dissipation and the efficiency loss, you're barely getting to 20%. Okay, or 30% at best. Solar panels, the same way. The experiments in space are showing the promise of initial efficiency levels of 80% efficiency. By by taking the energy of the sun and transforming it into a radio wave, the radio wave coming down to Earth, safe for humans, transmitted or received into a rectenna, and then transferred back into electricity, you're receiving it at 80% efficiency. So now you're talking about an immediate jump of 60% efficiency. So now you're talking about what you see with computers, where back in the day, computers would fit on the third floor of a skyscraper and be millions of dollars. And now in everybody's pocket is a computer that for $500 to $800 that blows away anything that was 50 years ago.
So these satellites would beam energy into, I'm sorry, what did you call it?
A rectenna. It's like an antenna, but it's basically for radio waves to be absorbed and then turned back into electricity.
So the rectenna would essentially take place of power plants, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
It would become the power plant.
Right.
And then would that energy be disseminated through power lines?
So now back to your question about how solar power from space will evolve. I don't know. But here's what I would predict. And again, predicting is dangerous business, and so I don't want to do it. But what we know we could do right now, if we can build in space affordably, based on the model of this company and why this company exists, is we could have solar power transmitted into radio waves, beamed down to a rectenna that's right by a power plant, and poured it into the power lines so that we still are seeing a return on investment in the current structure.
I saw another clip too that I want to ask you about. This was on April 14th, 2025. Michael Kratz, I can't pronounce his last name, director of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, stated, "Our technologies permit us to manipulate time and space.
Yes.
They leave distance annihilated because things grow and improve productivity." What does he mean by that?
We seem to have lost focus and vision, to have lowered our sights and let systems and structures and bureaucracies muddle us along. But we are capable of so much more. Our technologies permit us to manipulate time and space. They leave distance annihilated, cause things to grow and improve productivity.
Yeah, so what I think he's referring to is quantum. So let's spend a couple minutes on quantum because it's a fascinating topic. And I'll start by telling you what I think is the ultimate outcome of quantum for me. It is the evidence of God. And it's the evidence of the fact that we totally misunderstand and do not know even the beginnings of the complexity of the universe we live in. That God has created us with such infinite complexity, connected with the universe and our inner and our interior life, our relationship with God and with one another, that we are, again, we're like children crawling around, not even being aware of the world we're in. Einstein was, right when he said, this theory of relativity that I'm giving you is wrong, but it's the best I can do in my lifetime to at least explain a small sliver of what we observe in reality, but it's totally wrong. And we know that now. So having said that for me, this is the evidence of God, and it may explain a lot of the things that people see that they can't explain. Okay. And I'll just describe, in fact, something everybody can read if they want to be aggressive about learning about quantum. Read about quantum computing. Read about quantum sensing. Read about quantum communication.
I did a little bit of research on this, and the way that I understand it is that if you split an atom, and it doesn't matter the distance that the two halves are. It could be, like you're saying, a whole nother part of the universe. It could be from US to Japan. It could be anywhere. But if you put a vibration on one of those halves of the atom, then no matter where the other part of the atom is, it will mimic the exact same vibration.
Yes.
And we're able to communicate that way.
That's right. But here's the other part of it that is so fascinating and gets to the time travel. So it's not just that you can communicate that way, but that if the communication is observed by a third party, it will rewrite history and it will never have happened.
What do you mean by that?
Okay, so this is where your audience needs to do their own reading, okay? Because I am not an expert, but the experts have documented and proven that quantum communication has certain qualities to it that we don't understand. One of them is the one you just talked about, where the vibration of one is identical and simultaneous to the other, no matter how far apart they are. We don't know why or how, but we know it's true, and we know how to manipulate that to communicate, okay? We know how to.
We don't understand the connection.
We don't understand the connection, okay? But the other piece of it is that if you communicate and somebody observes it and you didn't want it to be observed, it disappears, meaning it never happened. And when you go back and you look, the evidence does not exist that it ever happened.
Say that again?
Yeah, I know. It's a
Sorry.
mind bender. Okay, if quantum communication, and again, I want to be very careful that I'm not the expert. Okay, so you need to read the literature yourself and the peer-reviewed documents on some of the experiments that have taken place with quantum communication. But it literally can rewrite history. If it does not want to be seen, if it does not want it to be discovered, it is not discoverable. And so I say it rewrites history. I don't know how it does that, and I don't think anybody does. But we have observed it. That if it's observed, it disappears, and it's like it never happened. So again, I don't know, but God has created a universe where these things could happen. And like the caveman that sees the first lightning that starts a fire, we are on a race to figure out how we can harness this reality of our physical universe.
No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.